thank you everybody for taking a few minutes to listen to a brief overview of our projects at China Camp State Park in the San Francisco Bay National Estuarine Research Reserve. And we have funding from the Science Collaborative to go into our second phase of work to address sea level rise adaptation of the low-lying shoreline road through our state park, which is our reserve site. My name is Stuart Siegel. I am the interim manager of the Research Reserve, and I am also the project lead for this project. And Amy Good, who's our coastal training program coordinator, is our collaborative lead. So let me give you a brief setting of where China Camp State Park is in San Francisco Bay. We are located in the northwestern part of the bay. It is our reserve is owned by the California State Parks, and it's a mixture of oak woodlands and grasslands in the watershed, dropping down to San Francisco Bay itself. The park has about 400,000 visitors annually. It's a major destination for mountain biking and hiking. There's also a campground at the site, and then we have both a historic Chinese village, which is gets the name of China Camp State Park, but also have very active tribal cultural uses today, as well as significant archaeological resources at the park. The management issues that we're facing, that we're addressing through this Science Collaborative project, is the fact that we have about 1.5 miles of low-lying shoreline road that floods commonly in the wintertime during the king tides, and then also during winter storms from the watershed. And it's an issue because this road serves as a transportation network for the local region, as well as the ability to get people into and out of the park for recreation, education, the tribal uses, as I mentioned before. And also that same road really blocks the marsh. The way it was built 125 years ago, and it cuts off some of the interior marsh that are really impairing the ecology of the marsh. So we're trying to tackle both the road function and the road impairment, and so that's adaptable to sea level rise over time. Kind of taking a closer look at what this place looks like. You can see in the distance on the left the tidal marsh. That's a nice big tide where the wetland is very flooded. Those 3 blue lines show the current culverts that are about 1.5 feet diameter that connect under the road to the interior marshes. There's 2 of these interior marsh settings. You can just see on the dryness on the right versus the flooded on the left tidal marsh, how much those culverts impair the hydrology of these natural systems. So we're trying to bring those 2 into parity and then provide sea level rise resilience for these marshes as time goes forward with sea level rise. We have a very large community of interest in this project, which makes it really fun, and that's the collaborative nature, and also makes some of the challenges. So the reserve is owned by the California State Parks, and the road itself is owned by the county. And then the park is operated by a nonprofit park operator. And we have both elected officials and public safety officials from the city and the county. They're very interested that this road is an evacuation corridor during if there's any major events that need evacuation. The tribe uses the site quite extensively. We have recreation interests in the gray on the left. We have recreation, conservation, research organizations, advocacy. So there's quite a bit of regional interests that really pay a lot of attention to this place. And then we have the regulatory and the resource agencies that obviously have to give us permits to do a new adaptation out there and weigh in on resource management as part of that whole process. And then our other community of interests are entities that either have or might be sources of funding to actually address the sea level rise issues at the park. So we had a prior Catalyst grant from the Science Collaborative that we used to develop a set of alternatives that we're now addressing in more detail with this current grant. And so the trick there, and back in 2018 and 2019, was really getting us to the point of what our alternatives should be and working with the community that we just described. And so we had to really characterize the problems. So everybody was on the same page there, really work together as a group to establish our goals and objectives for what we want to accomplish, to tackle the issues out there. We had a real community brainstorming process so that we weren't presenting the solutions, that the community was generating ideas that we then merged into a set of possible alternatives. We did a little bit of assessment of those, and then we had all the folks that participated essentially vote on which ones they thought were worth carrying forward into much more detailed feasibility assessments. that process gave us a set of essentially 3 types of alternatives that we're looking at now. And so one is a raise in place alternatives, which is basically take the current alignment of the road and in some fashion raise it vertically so that it's out of the way of sea level rise and really help support the recovery and resilience of the interior marshes. And there's different ways to do that. Another version on the bottom here is to reroute part of the lowland road around the interior marshes and basically follow a higher contour on the hillsides there. And then a third set of alternatives was basically leave the road the way it is, improve the hydrology for the marsh, and accept the fact that the road becomes less functional and will get closed eventually. Those are the set of alternatives that were selected to give more attention to for the feasibility study. So this current grant that we have from the Science Collaborative is this number 2 here on the sort of middle left. And so the alternatives identified we completed in fall of 2019. And what we're doing now is really getting into the nitty-gritty of which ones could actually work. How would they work in terms of natural resource enhancement, protecting cultural and tribal resources, engineering feasibility, how they affect recreation and public access, and the ability to use the site for education. So really get a sense of in the details which ones really achieve what we're trying to accomplish out there. Once we finish this process, which will be in 2024, then we go into the more classic environmental permitting and design phase, developing an actual draft plan, going through environmental review and permits, and then design and construction, and ultimately long-term operations and management of the project. To get there is kind of interesting, and this is maybe a little bit of a wonky slide, but I'll try to kind of walk through it. Is we have a set of investigations that we're going to do on the left with the current round of work, archaeological and cultural resources, hydrology, sediment supply, and so forth. Separately, the county is undertaking all the engineering work on geotechnical borings to understand the ability to support a more substantial roadway out there. All of these pieces of information feed into a set of feasibility assessments. How do these different alternatives really meet the goals and objectives, and how buildable are they? How much will they cost? How feasible, a set of what are the potential impacts across all the different kinds of resources out there? And then from that, through our community-based process, is select from amongst all these alternatives which one we want to be the community-based project out there. And with that, I would like to really say thank you to the Science Collaborative. We've had great media coverage for this current grant that we're working under. We've had great attention from our elected officials at the local, state, and federal level. And we are really looking forward to bringing this project forward. Thank you very much.